Carrying moccasins or wearing moccasins is an incredible responsibility, because you're not only carrying yourself when you step forward into creation, but you're carrying all the stories that took place that led into the moccasins being what it is. Not just the human hands that touched it, the grandmothers, the granddaughters, the fathers, the sons, everyone who touched that moccasin along the way, but it's also the animal, the moose or the deer that gifted itself to make that moccasin. The rain that fell on the moose, the food that moose ate, all of the plants and the animals that moose interacted with. But then it doesn't stop there either. It's also the sunlight, the moonlight, the wind, all of those parts that went into that moccasin, all the way back to the first moment of creation when all of these things are created. And that this huge spectrum of things that have led to what is on your feet is really the epicenter of creation. It is the apex of creation is on your feet. And now your responsibility is to step forward in a good way with all of these stories that made you now who you are. You get a chance to add your footstep to that story.
We must be mindful how we make our footprints on the earth. What footprints are we going to leave? And are the ancestors going to smile upon us when we've made those footprints and it's our time to go home?
The world knows moccasins as the footwear of Indigenous people. But they are more than just a pair of shoes. They teach people who they are. After centuries of assimilation, much of those teachings have faded. As traditional ways are reintroduced, it's easy to discover the value they bring to individuals, families, and communities.
My parents asked me when I was young, are your footprints going to be the kind that your children and your grandchildren can follow? Are they going to be gentle footprints so that they'll be able to see where your moccasin went? Or are they going to be deep footprints that they'll trip in and not be able to follow because they're spending too much time wondering where and how they can get around them?
Growing up in the city and away from her culture, Aubrie struggled with her Indigenous identity as she became a mother. Today she's visiting her family in Sagkeeng First Nation.
When I was Nia's age, when I was like 5 or 6, I used to go out there a lot. My mom would drop us off at my grandma's house when my grandparents were alive. But after they passed, we didn't really go visit out there much because my mom's not close to her family either, so I guess there wouldn't be a reason for me to be close to my family either if my mom wouldn't be out there.
A residential school survivor, Aubrie's mother was conditioned to look down on her culture.
I really drifted away from my mom. Like, our relationship was really strained when she was going through her stuff and when she was, I guess, homeless.
Having learned from her mother's struggles, Aubrie didn't want her family to end up on the same path.
I think it's important for them to be close with both Chris and myself, our families. I think the bigger circle they have and the more people they have, sort of giving them advice and making sure that they stay on the right path, that's very important. That's something I want for them.
Aubrie is proactive in immersing her children in their culture through their school and in their extracurricular activities. However, the juggling of school, work, and parenting, while at the same time navigating how to teach her children their traditional ways, has been a considerable struggle. Moccasins have become a mainstream product in the fashion industry. Just ask Winnipeg's own Manitoba Mukluks, the largest Aboriginal-owned footwear company in the world.
We're actually at the point now where we're almost the #1 boot in the prairies, outselling sorels.
The modernization of Manitoba Mukluks has led them to be manufactured both here and overseas. Helping lead the next generation of new Indigenous artisans is Teekca. Teekca's mother owns the craft and clothing store, Teekca's Boutique. You would think it would have been easy for Teekca to learn how to make moccasins from her mother.
When we were really little, she was a nurse, so she was super busy, and then she wanted to spend more time with us. So then she opened up a store, which is like the most random thing, but she ended up trying to do that. And that was still really busy, so we never really got around for her to sit down with us and teach us how to make anything. But in the end, she did end up teaching me through the StoryBoot school.
Manitoba Mukluks started a school that offers free classes to those looking to make traditional moccasins.
We actually have had a waiting list since the StoryBoot school started, and we've advertised one time.
Despite being a teacher at the StoryBoot school, Teekca's mother, Marilyn, was not able to learn moccasin making from her family due to the intergenerational effects of residential schools. This has created a disconnect in teaching traditional ways between elders and youth.
I seen a pair of moccasins on this lady and they were so nicely made. I really thought I would really like to make those. So I got her to teach me in a couple of afternoons the basics of making a moccasin, and now I just design and make whatever I feel like making.
The StoryBoot school gave Marilyn an innovative way of teaching Teekca how to make moccasins and flourish as an entrepreneur. Today they're discussing the layout for Teekca's new store, Manitou Made. As a youth, Gloria Beckman took learning her traditions into her own hands.
I mean, I ran away from residential schools when I was 13, and I spent the night in a farm outside in October and made it home to Ronge, and I never went back to school. My parents took me out to the trap line. I said, I don't even know if anybody came to look for me or not.
Gloria leaned on her roots after a series of incidents. From birch bark writing to jewelry making, Gloria has taught all kinds of crafts along with being an instructor at the StoryBoot school.
What happened was I ended up, a year after I got injured at work, I got hit by a semi. I went from specialist to specialist, and in that time I couldn't do anything very well. Like my ribs were popping in and out. I was on and off my sit bones, so pretty much off my rocker. But you have to survive. You have to pay rent. You have to survive in the city. So what I did was I would sew. When I did sew, I would sew this way rather than use my right hand and move the thread. For me, it didn't only help me financially, it helped me emotionally and spiritually, because you're not going to go crazy with pain, because you're still focusing on something else, and you're actually creating things that look nice. I believe in the law of attraction, so if you can see beauty and you can create beauty, that's more healing than, oh my, I can't handle this pain. Oops, I can't handle this pain.
Realizing she needed a mentor, Aubrie got in touch with Gloria.
I think I could have probably avoided like a lot of stupid things if I had like someone in my life to kind of mentor me and help me stick to my culture and like doing the right things. If I could give that to my kids, that's something I never had, and it's important for them to see their parents participating in their culture as well, just so that they'll feel it's important to them and that it's important to participate in that, because that's not something I had when I was growing up. I just want them to have a strong sense of identity, and I think that their culture plays a huge role in that, especially Nia learning the Ojibwe language. I think that's very key to her development. And so she won't feel like an outcast when she's with, I guess, her native friends, just like how I felt. Like, I don't really know a lot about my culture, and I don't know, sometimes it makes me feel ashamed.
There's more over there, though.
It is important to know who you are. A common theme among Indigenous people growing up in the city is the disconnection they feel.
I don't know how anybody can feel connected in the cities, because it's all underground, it's all wires and pipes. With the moccasins, you can feel everything that the earth has. Like, I guess that's why they say you're walking with the earth. I just think that it's more healing for them because they're involved in something, right? And they feel like they have a purpose. And I think that anybody who feels like they're needed or wanted and feels like they have a purpose in life, they're going to do better than if they don't. And if they're not told or shown that they are important, then they get lost.
A child's first moccasin is a pivotal point in their life. It's a beginning to their story, walking on this earth.
When a baby is born, the Ojibwe and the Cree people have what they call a walking out ceremony. Until that walking out ceremony happens around a year and 6 months and 2 years old, a child never puts their feet on the actual earth, right? The wraps that they make to put them on the earth usually has beadwork. So those first moccasins are usually decorated with who they are. The baby will sign it with their footprint when they go walking out on the ground, on the earth. So Mother Earth will watch for those footprints to come.
In places like Norway House and the Pas, moccasin making has proven to be a successful way for individuals and communities to connect to their culture. Robert and his mother, Edna Nabess, are examples of how families can come together and heal through the traditional craft.
My birth certificate said it has undecided on it because I was born in the trapline Willow Bay, and so I guess that's not recognized in any of the maps, so they just put that there. My mother went to residential school, and she said she learned how to sew there. And then so my dad used to wear these leather jackets, and when they'd, get older, something, he'd get a new one. And then I have 9 brothers and sisters, and so she took them apart, and then she made us moccasins out of them. And so she's the one that taught me how to make moccasins. When my youngest son, Keith, was 2, I became a single parent. So I cooked, and I actually made moccasins and started selling them. And the Pas, White Feather Creations, it's been here for 14 years, and I gave that to my oldest son, Robert, and he's been running it.
For Robert, making moccasins was his way of getting out of a life of crime.
I was a gangster pretty much my whole life before this, and I know how to fight, sell rock, and make stuff. This saved my life. If I didn't have this, I'd most likely be dead right now. I just realized what I was doing to my people and myself. And my daughter came along, and that's what gave me that last kick to change my life. The most important thing is to get back to your roots and to learn who you are, learn who your people are. Because that's why many of us are lost. We don't know who we are because this world tells us who we are, and we believe it after a while. Like, a lot of my buddies were locked up and they get out, they got nothing to do. So I show them how to make moccasins or carve or sew or whatever, and they sit here and help me. And I can see their mind, they're thinking. It's like meditating when you're making something, because you're silent and you're thinking.
Growing up in Norway House, Rosa took the opportunity to spend time with as many of the elders in her community as she could. She realized as an adult that she was the last person who knew the craft of moccasin making. Rosa is now regarded as the most successful traditional artisan in Manitoba. Her grandmother inspired her to take it upon herself to bring this craft back to her community.
One time she said, you know, you have to learn, because one day I'm not going to be here, you know. So I have taught a lot of students, probably like 100 students already selling their stuff and all that.
At the local college, Rosa's students can't get enough of hearing the teachings and stories she shares.
They say it's fun and, you know, they know how to do it, but they still keep coming back, you know. I can't get rid of them.
One of the great things about moccasins that I've seen is that it connects people together. Grandmothers and granddaughters, grandfathers and grandsons, fathers and mothers connecting. Moccasins bring people together.
As Aubrie writes her story, she passes on the teachings she has learned to her family.
I was reading like a Prince quote. He was like, I don't regret anything, because if you take out one thing, the whole structure falls. And I feel like I'm kind of getting to a good place in my life. I was just happy that I had children young, because my sisters have all their kids and all of our kids are very close. They're super tight. They have a strong bond, all of them. And that's like something, if they learn about their culture, they're going to pass it along to their cousins. So it's going to be good. You want some of this?
What? Mommy asks you a question and then you have to pull them out, right?
Okay, which one do you want to know? That one?
Making moccasins has a positive effect on one's esteem.
Sometimes you see kids come in, they look so sad and they don't smile, and right at the last class there's non-stop smiles, because they can see what they've done and how far they came and that they could do it. So it's really a sense of pride for me, and I feel really proud that they could do it.
And it's just, you know, keeping our family traditions alive, like the tanning the hides, making the moccasins. It's all something that my mother learned from her mother, and then she passed down to me.
With Gloria, Aubrie begins to make her first pair of moccasins for her youngest child, CJ. With newfound confidence, she feels that she can begin to pass on the teachings she is learning with her children. Despite all of the changes that have been forced upon us, we are still here, making moccasins, following our traditions, and passing them on to our families.
When we walk the earth, we're not walking it alone. And so this knowledge like, you know, your imprint on your foot, it's important because it's who you are. And as long as you know who you are and where you're going, your footprints will be clear. I think the children and the youth of today, they don't often know where they're going because they're not taught this knowledge. They're not given the ceremonies that they have a right to, the walking out ceremony. So they're wandering around aimlessly, looking for what they're missing. And what they're missing is the recognition that their footprints are important. And if they're made to understand that when they're a child, they'll always be mindful about where they put their footprints. And of course, when we do that, our ancestors do smile.
A jackus is a star, yet a jack, a jackok. However, I guess it depends on who the speaker is. The older speakers say it a little different. It's nice to lay down and watch somebody work.
It's nice to learn, to have someone to teach me.